If I beat the up, is you gon' tell on me?
The Legend of Zelda. The series has done well over the last few decades with huge installments like Ocarina of Time that revolutionized 3D action-adventure games, games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which helped
fucking sandwich.
GameCube giants like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, which used new art direction to tell new takes on the classic Hyrulean-based adventure. Skyward Sword outlining past events and showing us the beginning of the cycle of chaos and hatred that's seen in every installment of a Zelda game. And the latest games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Huge accomplishments in gaming and really a testament of where we're at with game engines where we can treat games like these on a Switch as sandbox environments where you can build whatever you really think you can build. However, as great as all these games are, there is a problem they all share, excluding Wind Waker. And that problem is Hyrule itself. I'm kind of sick and tired of exploring, or lack of exploring, the same Hyrule over and over again. It's gotten pretty boring and tiresome over the years to just go through the same domains like Zora's Domain, Death Mountain, Lake Hylia, Kokiri Forest, Lost Woods. It's gotten repetitive and, in my opinion, a little bit stale. There's a YouTuber by the name of Arlo, who many of you probably are subscribed to this channel probably know who that is. He is a huge video game commentating channel, and he himself has made a video talking about the issue with using Hyrule in the Zelda installments. He highlights how using the same map and same region as a crutch has actually turned to hurt the series more than glorify its iconic setting. Check out his video if you haven't, it's a pretty good video. Echoing Arlo though, I do think Zelda can benefit from not just using or recycling the same places in Hyrule, but instead doing a deeper dive into the area. Look at Wind Waker. Instead of using Hyrule, which it technically did, it made it completely different. It introduced this whole flooding system that was somehow the best solution to stop Ganon at the time. I don't know. It introduced this flooding system that essentially made Hyrule a bunch of remote islands. And there were elements like the Kokiri in the Forbidden Woods section of the game, but you also had more than just relying on old elements. You had new races like the Rito, which I think were supposed to represent the evolution of Goron. You have all these new maps indicating aspects of lore of Hyrule. Like you still have, Nehru's Pearl being mentioned. You have Din and you have Pharaoh being mentioned as well. You have mentions of the Triforce. But there's not a complete lean into, hey, this is Death Mountain. Hey, this is specifically Lake Hylia. Hey, this is specifically the Lost Woods. It was still the elements of Hyrule with a twist. It felt brand new and kind of refreshing. Hell, even the Oracle games, Oracle Seasons and Ages, which I don't think get a good rep. No one really talks about those games as they should. Those games introduce a whole new kingdom in each game with brand new races as well. Brand new people, just very different setting. It wasn't Hyrule at all, really. Echoing the genius that was direction of Wind Waker, you even had Spirit Tracks. Spirit Tracks itself was a successor to Wind Waker, or Phantom Hourglass, I should say. But Spirit Tracks was great because it explored a new continent that was discovered post Wind Waker's content. And that's really dope. A new continent, a new area outside even the realm of Hyrule. That's a lot of fun. I think really cool to explore. Why not keep doing that? I think the best example by far has been Majora's Mask, a cult classic favorite. It's the same universe as Ocarina of Time, with the same NPCs and people you recognize from the first game, but it truly is a brand new map being Termina. You don't have anything like Hyrule. You have the races like Goron, Zora, and the Deku, but you don't have anything remotely similar to what you had in Hyrule. The whole game even had a new mythology segment to it where there's giants involved. It wasn't the three typical gods, Din, Pharaoh, Nehru, who saved the day. It was these giants, which we've never explored or ever talked about in any other game. Now, there's nothing wrong or inherently wrong with Hyrule, or what it's, been like for the last couple games. I love Hyrule. But why not break this norm completely, or at least explore more of Hyrule besides this is the same three locations you've seen for these three specific races over and over and over again with a new palette, a new art direction, what have you. So, when telling myself this, I also had to ask myself the question, so then what do I think should be the next Zelda game or next major installment. What direction do they need to take to satisfy my not hatred but disinterest in using Hyrule so much? As most answers to the most pressing questions in my life, I found the answer in Ocarina of Time, specifically the Shadow Temple. Here's gathered Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred. These words greet every player who enters the Shadow Temple in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. But while many dismiss this as a typical dungeon atmospheric warning, this warning holds a lot more than just that. It holds far darker implications about Hyrule's past, implications that echo throughout the entire Zelda series. Off rip, the Shadow Temple is pretty disturbing, dude. Like, I don't think there's enough video essays or enough conversations or enough discussions, what have you, about how weirdly dark this dungeon is. It is kind of nightmare fuel when you really break down the dungeon itself. The Shadow Temple stands apart from the other dungeons in Ocarina of Time completely. While others celebrate elements of nature or showcase grand architecture like something like the Spirit Medallion's Temple or something like the Forest Temple, this temple feels more like a prison. Or worse, it's a borderline just torture chamber straight up. Every room, every mechanism seems designed not to test heroes like Link, but to break prisoners instead. There is no other temple bearing bloodstained walls, scythes, and literal rooms where the floor and walls are composed entirely of human skulls. Literally, if you have not played the original N64 cartridge version of Ocarina of Time, you may not know that there are some rooms when you zoom in and look around, wall, floor, and ceiling are all covered in human skulls. Straight up. They didn't even try to censor it or make it look like it could be something else. It is just entirely human skulls, which is an astronomical amount of deaths. The temple feels like a complete depart from the typical hero's journey, but instead a sinister element of Hyrule's past. The temple doesn't seem to have been any better for Ganondorf's involvement, as we've seen with the Death Mountain area, as we've seen with the Lost Woods area, as we've seen with Zora's Domain. Even the song that gets you to the temple, and it's the only way to get to the temple, the Nocturne of Shadow. It sounds extremely somber and deflating compared to other temples. The Shadow Temple's music alone, on top of the Nocturne of Shadow, is extremely uncomfortable. It's not a playlist ad. I listen a lot to video game music, and I don't think I've ever bumped the Shadow Temple while studying for an exam or casually going for a walk. It is not a banger. You get sounds of a dying angel and this quartet of deep monsters humming in the background. Not to mention the dissonant half step notes that are playing in the background that sound like they never reach a satisfying end. Like a looming staircase going downstairs, but you can't quite reach the basement. If the music and the description I'm telling you about this temple is not enough, then look at the Zelda Encyclopedia for more proof of how sinister this temple actually is. This is what the Zelda Encyclopedia says verbatim. The Shadow Temple located in Kakariko Village Graveyard. It is a place where the Sheikah entrusted with the lives of the Hyrule royal family have historically taken enemies of the royal family to be interrogated or worse. Because it stands as a symbol of Hyrule's dark history, it is taboo for the royal family to speak of this temple and its horrific purpose. The temple was operated by the Sheikah, sworn protectors to the royal family, and a race that we throughout the years have gotten more and more involved with, especially with the latest installments of Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Protection by the Sheikah in this game seems to bear a much more darker tone. Historical records tell us that the medieval royal guards didn't just defend. They also eliminated threats through interrogation, torture, and execution. The Shadow Temple bears all hallmarks of such a facility for said torture or punishment. You got guillotines and spike traps designed for execution, chambers filled with human remains, presence of torture devices, cells and imprisonment areas, the overwhelming presence of spirits unable to rest. And obviously some of these examples are at the Shadow Temple, but I'm kind of combining the two because I do feel like the bottom of the well was also used as a punishment or, torture area. I think it's pretty obvious. This is evidence of war crimes. Legitimately war crimes. I think there's a bedrock of context that really allows us to understand what is a Shadow Temple when you look at the concepts of the Hyrulean Civil War, which were kind of sprinkled here and there throughout Ocarina of Time, and I think maybe other games, I can't quite recall. But the Hyrulean Civil War has always been something that's kind of been briefly mentioned. A war that Hyrule, threw to take over the land itself and give it to the royal family that runs it now. This war itself obviously has dark implications when you look at something like the Shadow Temple, where I think majority of its prisoners of war had to face. I think what further even pushes support of this claim that the dark history of the Shadow Temple is one to remain dark and one that's kind of a blemish on the royal family is you look at Wind Waker. The topic of Hyrule's Dark Past may explain one of the most interesting decisions at the end of Wind Waker. Why the King of Hyrule chooses to let his kingdom remain submerged. When he says, let the vast kingdom be washed away, when he makes his wish on the Triforce itself, he's not just speaking about physical structures, but he may be speaking about washing away the sins of their past. To bury the old past of Hyrule. The king himself could see what Ganondorf was trying to do to restore Hyrule and realize that it may be better off the way it was because of their sins. Not just Ganondorf's sins, but the royal family. Maybe there is no good side. Maybe both sides themselves, the Gerudo's king and the royal family itself, never really had a just means to an end. I think the Shadow Temple represents everything the king might want to erase. The dark foundations upon which Hyrule's golden age was built. His decision becomes not just resignation, but redemption. The dark history of Hyrule presents rich territory for future Zelda stories. When the series typically focuses on grand battles between good and evil, the Shadow Temple reminds us that the most compelling stories often lie in the moral gray areas, where good is subjective. I like a complex narrative. I don't just want a guy who's good, character A, to be character who's bad, character B. I want character A to realize what they're doing could be, not the best solution. Or what character B is doing, when you spin it from his POV, you can understand his direction, why he wants to do this. I like that narrative. I like people to realize that the characters they're reading or they're watching through a media are not that different from humans who have conflicts every day. The complex legacy of the Sheikah, the true costs of Hyrule's unification, and the moral compromises made in the name of peace, these are just themes that could drive the series into a bold new narrative territory that I'm dying to see for something like Zelda. I know myself that if Nintendo were to take that direction, that's a day one purchase. Tapping into the history, the game could focus on ancient Hyrule, where there is no kingdom, and there really is no Hyrule. All known and unknown races have yet to settle in their respective iconic settings. There's new enemies, there's new areas, there's new environments. Maybe there is no Zora quite yet. Maybe the Zora themselves weren't even in Zora's domain. Obviously, there could be somewhere else. There could be so much done with this. We don't know anything from this time because it's not too far back where it's Skyward Sword. But at the same time, it's not, far enough what we've seen so far. It's this gray area of how did Hyrule come under this royal family's control? What do they have to do? And who are the native people to the land? Maybe there was some native race we don't know about before we met all these other races. There's so much unexplored territory you can really dive into with this. Obviously, this is still Nintendo we're talking about, so I don't mean to suggest making it extremely dark, where every action seen or committed is a war crime. However, use characters like Zelda, or important NPCs across races, or, in my opinion, the best example is using the Sheikah. Make a Sheikah main character. That would be nuts. Especially to help deliver a narrative of struggle and conflict. Introduce why all the Hyrulean races live in segregated communities. How did the royal family come to be? Why are the Dekus in this area? Why are the Zoras in that area? Why are the Gorons in this area? Maybe there was something there. Maybe there was a treaty made. More importantly, what was the Shadow Temple doing in its peak, in its prime? What was happening inside that dungeon? Can the Sheikah themselves give us that POV? And to re-echo back or recircle back to my statement about the Sheikah, we've been getting so much lore about them lately. Honestly, I don't care about Link right now. Or Zelda, really. Make the character a Sheikah and show us the origins of that race. Why are they always serving full-fledged, die-hard warriors who would throw their lives away for the Hyrulean royal family? Where did this start from? What were they doing in the Shadow Temple? What are their real motives? Were they not like this always? Where there's a time where maybe this race was not so combat heavy and was more peaceful and the royal family changed them? I want to know so much more about how this race came to be what they are now. So throw the Triforce out the window. Give me conspiracy theories. Give me government psyop missions. Like, give me something that shows me the darkness of Hyrule, because it definitely existed once, and Nintendo loved to hint at it in Ocarina of Time and has never fully said, let's turn the knob on it all the way. So yeah, that's it. The Shadow Temple stands as much more than just a dungeon. It's a testament to the depths of storytelling possible in the Zelda series. I think it's a reminder that in a fairy tale kingdom, power comes with a price. I don't know really how to close this out. This is kind of more just some brain spewage I had last weekend thinking about, temples in Zelda. So I kind of asked ChatGPT how to close this out, and this is kind of corny, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because fuck it, we ball. Sometimes, the greatest monsters aren't the ones we fight, but the ones we create in the name of justice. And with that, let me know what you guys think about the Shadow Temple, its origins. What are your theories about the Shadow Temple? What would you like Nintendo to do with something like this lore to continue the series? Because as much as I love the games we have so far, change it up, man. I don't want to just go pick up the Guffin Crystal at Forest Temple, Fire Temple, Water Temple in the same areas and then beat Ganon. I know Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were different from that, but I don't want Hyrule anymore, man. I want something very different. Anyway, this has been Simon from the Fanning Brothers. See you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.